Yeah, look. Like,
Jeez. Ah.
oh, fuck, mine just got knocked out. God damn it.
Oh, I can do
Testing. Okay.
I have no idea where my thing unplugged, Bernard. I think it was under the table. Far left. Oh, right there. There. No, wait, not that one.
Cool.
Well, it had to be.
that link will take you to like the
Testing.
and all that
There
stuff.
we go. I think. Am I hearing myself? I think so. Okay. Yeah, here it goes. Okay, I'm ready.
All right.
Yeah.
We are indeed.
It's raw, it's uncensored, it's live 24/7. It's chaoticradio.com.
Probably need this.
Good morning.
Good
It's
morning.
time for the Jeff and Janki Show.
Boy, is it ever. You were doing
Boy, is it ever. Oh, man. And here we are in the city of Montclair, just an hour from Hollywood, or wherever you are.
Montclair.
Good morning, Janki.
Good morning, Jeffro. Hey, good news. Our guest is here. The great
Oh, our
Kennedy
guests are
Phillips.
here. Yes, his name is Kennedy Phillips.
I'm sorry you didn't notice me there. I disappeared for a brief moment. I have that effect on people. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we don't have shows unless we have guests, you know.
This is true.
God, what a shame that would be.
Yeah.
Well, that remains to be seen. It's your job to entertain us and them.
Yes.
No pressure.
So, who is Kennedy Phillips?
Well, I am a sound designer and editor by trade. I mostly do freelance, but recently I've been trying my hand at directing for audio dramas.
Oh.
Now, for those of you who are not familiar with it, an audio drama is sort of way back in the day, back in like the 30s and the like, they used to have shows like The Green Hornet and The Shadow and the like of just people voice acting on the radio and like playing sound effects and the like to entertain people before, television was a big thing. And then television happened and they all died. I mean, figuratively, not like they literally died, but
A comment at the radio station.
yeah, but like But nowadays when people are commuting to work and stuff, they're like dying for content, and with the advent of streaming content like Netflix and the like, they want to be able to have control over what they're listening to. So a lot of people got the idea of bringing back radio dramas and putting them on podcasts, on radio stations and the like, and they've gotten huge all over the place. And you could pretty much find a radio drama for almost any type of genre or any type of topic you want to listen to. It's nuts, to be honest.
It's like audiobooks?
Yeah, it's like audiobooks. Usually with audio dramas, they have more sound design put into them.
Yeah.
And now that you could do digital everything these days. Making them has never been more accessible, because you could find some sound effect library or just get a microphone, go outside and find some cat yelling about something or other and put that on your show and make a radio drama about cats. I don't know if you want to.
Cats and radio dramas. Interesting. You know what I mean? Now tell us about yours, Magus Elgar.
Magus Elgar. Magus Elgar is a audio drama fantasy comedy inspired by the works of Terry Pratchett. If you're not familiar with Terry Pratchett,
Good Omens, American Gods.
well, that's Neil Gaiman, but he did help write Good Omens with Neil Gaiman. He made the one he's most famous for is the Discworld series, which, if I was to describe it, it's like Lord of the Rings as portrayed by Monty Python. And it's wicked funny. And for a long time, he was one of the most prolific and successful British authors ever. Right up until J.K. Rowling came in and Harry Pottered him out. Harry Pottered him to the side. But now the whole idea behind Terry Pratchett's brand of humor was that it talks about some big high fantasy things with a very tongue-in-cheek perspective on it. Like one of his books, Mort, is about death, the very concept of the Grim Reaper grabbing a peasant and saying, "I'm looking for an intern.
Yeah,
I need you to work for me." And the guy says, "Well, what's the pay like?" He's like, "Well, it's work experience. It's satisfaction.
Internship.
Know that you'll be making a difference."
Nice.
And like they've converted a couple of Terry Pratchett films to they've converted a couple Terry Pratchett books to films, like The Color of Magic, The Hogfather, and if I remember, Going Postal. All of them are fantastic, and they've got like some great people on there. They've got Christopher Lee playing Death. They've got Tim Curry as the villain, which I always absolutely adore that. Anyway, Magus Elgar is a show that is inspired by that kind of tone, about two magi, which are magic casters, and two scientists traveling the magical world of Hearth to find stamps. Scientific tools augmented with magical power.
Wow.
We've got an absolutely fantastic cast of about 12, 13 people. And the one thing about our show is that we have sound designed the bejesus out of it. It's because I did most of the sound design myself. We got nominated for Best Original Work by the Audio Publishers Association of America. And we are currently trying to poke around about the idea of a season 2 and maybe an animated series.
Wow.
So it all starts with the audio.
Yes.
And then you can build up from that. I mean, so what when you guys go into studio, do you just record this and plan it all out and then mix all your sound along with your audio with the vocals?
Well, what I do is I have a Foley stage that I go to get my recordings done, and
Which one do you use?
The Foley stage?
Yeah.
There's one over at Chapman University. I'm an alumni from Chapman,
okay.
and provided that I'm not stepping on the toes of a lot of students, they let me go in there at like ridiculous hours so that I can get some recordings done.
That's the way to do it.
It's like all the students, they want to have like their time between like 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. And I'm sitting there like, I will settle for 1 in the morning. I'm okay. I have no standards.
Yeah.
But like what I would do is that we would, for our show, it's a limited series because we require a lot of planning for our show to work. What we would end up doing is I would write these scripts, and I'd come in with this massive book of all of our scripts and all of our character breakdowns, drop it in the Foley stage, have some actors come in, record their lines, and we'd direct them live. But then we'd save the recordings for later and piece it together that way, because a lot of our actors are from out of town. Our main actor, William Violenis, who played Magus Elgar, he is in Canada. And I couldn't exactly afford to bring him over here to record for a week. But we had some people that came in from quite a ways to come in, like Randy Nazarian, who played one of our characters, Dr. Gra Horatio, came in from San Francisco to come in and talk, and he was an absolute blast.
Wow, interesting. Hey, did anybody feel? They said there was an earthquake about an hour ago out of San Bernardino. Anybody feel it? I didn't.
I never do. I never feel earthquakes. I mean, unless the bricks are falling down off a building or toys falling off the shelf, I won't notice.
So you tape it at Orange Coast College? I mean Chapman over
Chapman University.
In Orange County.
Yeah. I mean, like I moved away from there. I'm over at Lakewood right now, but I still go back to Chapman on occasion to do like some work or help around or something like that.
Oh, very nice.
It's a fantastic school. Like their film program is phenomenal. I'm not sure if you know the Chapman. Some Chapman alumni are everywhere in the film industry. Like one of the more recognizable ones are the two guys who directed Stranger Things came from Chapman.
Wow.
Wow, interesting. I was not aware of that. I know the guy who did The Fourth Kind went to
He did that too. He actually shot a lot of it at Chapman.
Really?
Well, yeah, because it had like the Chapman University logo.
Yeah, I
everything.
forgot about that. I wish I didn't hate that movie so much.
Well, that's unfortunate.
It was boring.
Which one was that?
It was the one where it was like about a guy investigating a series of alien abductions, but it was like a cross between interviewing live people and actually reenacting a lot of it.
The hottie from Resident Evil gets abducted by aliens, and she wakes up on the table, and the whole movie fades to black, and then comes back hours later. So the one part of the movie you wanted to see, she's unconscious.
Oh, man.
God, it makes me think of that one movie, Skyline.
God,
it was this whole movie was about like this alien abduction, and the whole thing takes place in a hotel room.
Yeah.
And like,
shut the windows.
Nothing of the alien abduction you see until like the very end, where like everything suddenly gets real, and then it ends.
It ends.
But would you believe
Skyline 2 was
there was apparently a sequel that had budget behind it? I look at the film.
How does that happen?
I look at the film and I see it on Netflix, and my immediate response is, "How did you
convince Skyline?" No, you know the story behind it. This is kind of horrific. So they were doing the effects for a movie called Battle Los Angeles, and the rumor is that they sort of decided, the effects house decided to make Skyline, which was kind of a knockoff on Battle Los Angeles. And Beyond Skyline comes like 8 years after they made the original.
Yeah, which...
I remember that in the original, for some reason, they're turning you into a gorilla with a human brain. They suck out your brain and turn you into a gorilla. This is Skyline.
Some kind of alien equivalent of it.
Yeah. And Skyline, they vacuum out her boyfriend's brain and turn him into a gorilla, and he's trying to get his humanity back. And my brother told me the plot. I had to watch it to see if it was as crazy as his plot description of it, and he was right, it was.
I want to meet the producer that took a look at Skyline and said, you know what this really needs? This really needs a sequel. I cannot sleep until we have this for people to see. People will pay money because I'm the only one that saw Skyline.
Your Skyline story surely doesn't end there, does it? I need to know what happens once they become gorillas with human brains.
I mean, I'll be honest, I was curious, but like...
It's incredibly boring. I fell asleep during Beyond Skyline, but I tried to get to the very last end of the credits, which are very hard on Netflix because they don't give you the ending.
Oh.
They blink away. They blink away for the ending credits.
Have you ever visited Chapman University?
I have. I did a short film for them called "Life Gives You Lemons," and it won a couple awards. It was a 7-Eleven owner. He was the main torturer in Iron Man. He's the guy Iron Man picks up and he throws to the crowd and goes, "He's all yours." So we shot that movie, part of it on campus and part off. And you're right. Your film department was exemplary.
Yeah,
you know?
like I like some of the most talented people I've ever met.
Not the guy who made Fourth Kind.
Well, he was long before I got there. But like I've met some pretty phenomenal people there, and like a lot of them I'm still in contact with. I have them contact me frequently for work.
As long as you owe them money.
Well, a lot of us trade favors because we've all got our own passion projects and stuff. Like I had a couple of Chapman colleagues of mine come in to help out with Magus Elgar.
Really?
For a couple of things. I mean, yeah, like some of them would do like some dialogue editing for me or something like that. One of my directors, Andrew Cornell, went to Chapman in the undergraduate program, and I was in the graduate program, and he signed on with me early on. And my producer, who we met at Chapman, he was a composer for my thesis film, hired me on as freelance for a while at Melody Gun, which was the company that helped me produce this.
Who's the most famous Chapman film grad we know of?
For the life of me, I don't know.
Okay.
I think I'd be able to tell you, but the one that I can think of off the top of my head are the brothers from Stranger Things.
Oh, very cool. Have you been to Chapman, Jeff?
Yeah, I've been there a few times. Really nice campus. But that was like years ago. I mean, decades.
Well, they've made some renovations to the Chapman over at Dodge College, which is their film department. It's kind of a little bit separate from Chapman proper. They've been renovating all the stuff surrounding it, like adding some sound stages, adding some editing suites and the like, and it's pretty nuts because you go in there and it's just they have everything.
That'll be cool. You know what I mean? And you haven't done any of the radio shows on campus yet?
No, I haven't. Mostly because I haven't considered asking.
Think about it.
Yeah, I should probably do that.
Yeah.
Heck, maybe I can convince him to play Megas Elgar on there.
So what's your origin story? Are you from California originally?
No, I'm not from California. I actually was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and by the age of 2 or 3, I moved down to Florida with my parents and lived on a boat for 12 years.
Wow, cool. Sailboat?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was a 50-foot Gulf Star. We were parked in Hendricks Island, Fort Lauderdale. And my parents, they work as home health nurses. At the time when I was a kid, they would work in hospitals and go all over the place and stuff. But we'd be on the boat pretty much indefinitely. Like, we didn't have a house or anything like that. And, it was comfortable. Like, we had all the amenities you'd expect to have in a house, like television, beds.
Yeah.
The boat never sank or anything?
No. Thankfully, no. Not until very, very, very much later, and due to a very stupid cavalcade of misfortunes.
So it did eventually sink.
Yes, but here's the kicker about that.
With all your stuff on board, or
no? But when I was like 8 years old, my parents picked up everything, sat me down with my sister, and they said, "We want to sail around the world."
So we'll see you two later.
Well, no, they actually, my dad leaned forward and says, "We're giving you a choice. You can you can come with us, or we can set up something here at home or anything like that." And my sister and I thought about it long, and I said, "We'll go with you. Let's." Why would we not do this?
You can't lay that crap on your kid at 8, though. You know what I mean? I mean, were you going to stay with grandma if you didn't, or
probably? I mean, we had some good family friends that would have stuck with us while we had our schooling and the like. But we got homeschooled, and we joined Expo '98, the Round the World Rally, which was this whole big route that goes around the world, following Magellan's route, with the exception of under South America. We just cut through Panama on that one because that's a bit of a rough leg.
And no pirates or
Yeah,
anything?
that's the bottom of the world at the axis. I mean, that's way down there.
Oh yeah, I mean we did run into a couple of bit of rough things, mostly weather, but we did run into pirates once.
Really? What happened?
Well,
Oh gosh, tell us about this.
so my we were out at sea in the Pacific. We get a radio call from somebody pretty close by because the shortwave radio has like a couple miles of range, of somebody that was getting boarded by pirates out in the middle of nowhere. And that is a harrowing experience because you've got nobody to come save you. There's nothing you can do about it. And we knew that they were going to come after us next because my dad was having a conversation with them at the time.
Wow.
So they knew we were out there. So my dad had to think quickly on what to do out there. And his immediate thought was,
You become
he starts to fake a conversation. Now, you see, the way that short range works is that you do have a maximum range for your location. So there's going to be overlap depending on where you are in the ocean. So my father faked a conversation with an aircraft carrier, made it sound like that he was calling out for help and that they were going to send helicopters, which the range for that is obscene for them. And the pirates, they bought it, packed up, and left before they even had a chance to show up. And the funny thing was that at the time, my dad called the aircraft carrier. He says, "Yeah, the USS Missouri is going to be coming over with a helicopter." And we wait for a long minute. My dad just kind of waits in silence, and it works. It works. They all leave off, and upon my dad closing it, my mom looks at my dad and says, "Isn't the USS Missouri at the bottom of Pearl Harbor right now?" He goes, "Yeah." I couldn't think of any names.
Oh my God, pulled it off.
Wow.
That could be terrifying, though. I mean, being out to sea and modern pirates. I mean,
like the modern pirates is one thing, but it's like shark attacks where it just does not happen nearly as much as you might think.
What about shark attacks? Did you ever see a shark attack? Or
No, I've seen sharks, but they're fine. Like they really don't really care about human interaction unless they mistake them for something else. Like they're actually pretty chill things. I've actually pet a shark once when I was in Galapagos. Oh, I can't remember. It was one of the more docile ones. I was like 8. What do you want from me? But the things that I did get attacked by, sea urchins, man of war, which I had wrapped around my chest at one point.
no way, a man of war. That's the most terrifying jellyfish in the ocean.
I mean, I would love to say that's true. There are so many things in there that can be worse, but the man of war is probably the most annoying one.
would you pee on your own chest to put out the stinging burns?
No, that's for sea urchins. Okay. Sea urchins, they dig into you and you have to pee on them to make them have an acidic reaction and retract. But for man of war, one thing that my parents did was they used meat tenderizer to deactivate the stinger cells. And I had it wrapped all around my chest, so they're putting it all over. But I think what was really funny about that particular exchange was we had a crewman who my father was not a huge fan of because he did a lot of things that you should not really do on a voyage that I feel that I would be in too proper a company to reiterate. So at one point we decide to go for a dip in the ocean because we were kind of becalmed, which is basically the wind becomes so stagnant that the ocean looks like glass.
Wow. God.
So you are not going anywhere. So we decided, well, let's go for a dip. And I jump in, and I'm immediately coated in man of war because we did not know that I did not know that the blue balloons in the water were not trash. Because that's usually the only thing that you can see of the man of war. And oftentimes they are so far ahead, and the tails of their stingers go back for tens, maybe even hundreds of feet.
No shit. Wow.
But this crewman thought it would be a good idea to go skinny dipping. And that went exactly where you thought it would go.
Really? You got stung on the junk?
Wrapped around the junk. And my father decided to play a very mean trick on him when he came up. And he's like, all right, you need to just do the meat tenderizer. Come on, dude, let's go. My dad goes, as a medical practitioner, I'm concerned that there might be some shrinkage about it. And the guy goes, I'm fine. You don't need to do anything. And just dealt with it. About 2 years later, when we were, out of everything, we were talking about the story again. I looked at my dad and was like, can that really happen? He goes, no.
Wow.
I mean, that's a big thing for a kid, especially under 10. I mean, to sail around the world, I mean, that takes a lot of navigation and not, you've got to know weather and how do you predict if a storm's coming or so your boat doesn't sink?
Oh, there's one guy on a long wave radio who broadcasted pretty much all over the world. There's a couple of stations like that where they talk about where the weather is and what's going on with it. I mean, technology now is so much more advanced, so you can keep track of that stuff with GPS and the like. But with being out at sea back in the late 90s, like 97, 98, you didn't have that kind of stuff. You had a radar that could show you like clouds and the like, but you couldn't really see the density of it or anything like that. And you only had a certain range. And when you're in a certain range of it, it's pretty much too late. You're going to get into it.
Kind of like the old circle with the thing that goes.
Yeah, exactly.
The scan,
Yeah, we had something exactly like that.
So you got the range.
So the guy on the long wave radio would we'd talk to them and say like, hey, we're going from this place to this place at these coordinates, and the guy would be like, you don't want to go there. There's something big coming on or something like that. Or like he would say like, oh, you're good. You should be fine. Just make sure that you stay on this heading, and you'll be able to avoid a big storm in the area.
Wow.
Of course, that doesn't always work. Mostly because we had run into some pretty bad storms. We ran into a pretty bad one in Jamaica where we got knocked sideways for a short bit. Luckily, like most boats have like lead bottoms, so it kind of pops back up.
Yeah.
We ran into the same typhoon, out in the Pacific.
Now, what's the difference between a typhoon and a monsoon?
Well, a monsoon is just a torrential downpour. It's just like a lot of rain. A typhoon is basically the Pacific equivalent of a hurricane. Wow. Which we went through that twice.
Wow.
Because our instruments got scrambled.
Damn.
It was nuts.
So yeah, you're going in the big swells and the boat being tossed around like that.
Yeah, it's you really want to spend a lot of your time up in the cockpit of the boat when that happens, because like when you're inside, you have like the ground is shifting so much you get nauseous pretty quickly. That doesn't mean there isn't some fun things that can be had there though. Because when I was a kid, when the boat would be doing like their big waves, I slept in the bow. That's where my bedroom was. And one thing that I could do was that when we hit to the apex and starts coming down, if you jump at that moment, you're weightless for a couple of seconds.
Wow.
And I enjoyed that for a grand total of 15 minutes until I jumped a little too high and smacked my head on the top.
Yeah. Damn.
Had a bit of an unpleasant experience with that. I mean, thankfully I didn't get a concussion, but of course my dad looks at me, takes one very stern look and says, "We're not doing that again, are we?"
How did that happen though?
Well, I jumped, and as the boat's coming down, because I jumped with enough force, I ended up flying up too high and smacked my head on the ceiling of the boat.
How long has your dad been sailing?
As long as a little bit longer than I've been alive, so 35
And do they
years.
still sail?
Yeah, they still sail. They do a lot of skiing now. Like my mother and my father, they run the Nurses Guild, which is a home health agency in Florida, and they still have a boat there.
But they live in a house now?
They live in a house now. The boat that they have now, though, is called the Prana.
Like the fish piranha?
No. Like Prana. I forget the meaning of it. I wish I could tell you. But the boat that we had originally was Dasein. Or Dasein.
Daseign.
No. Dasein.
Okay. So not Das Ein. Like
Well, it's like the German Das Ein, but like combined, it had a bit of a different meaning to it.
Did you like it? How did you guys meet anybody? I mean, you would never meet a girl and all that if you were on a boat. You ran for 20 years, or
On the contrary, I mean, it was 12 years, so the girl thing didn't become important until slightly later.
Gotcha.
But no, we met tons of people out at sea.
But you've never seen them again, right?
No, with the Round the World Rally, we were sailing alongside quite a few people, and we met some lifelong friends out there. I met Zay from Vagabundo. We met Wendy and their crew on Encore. Ocean's Dream. Like a lot of these boats, like I remember so much about my time with them. But I also would meet people like on islands or in areas and stuff, and they didn't speak a lick of English in some of these areas. But that didn't really discourage me from trying to communicate with them and try to make friends with them and just hang out and stuff like that.
Now, would you call your dad or Captain?
I would call him Sir. But no, I mean, no, Dad. I always would call him Dad because, like, we never really did the whole honorifics with the captain thing.
That would be funny.
But it does make me think of wanting to go back at some point. Like,
you would.
What is your diet? What was you eat when you're on the sea? What do you eat? I mean, you eat fish. I mean, you go fishing. What do you catch?
Actually, no. We are awful at fishing. My entire family. We can't fish if you put a gun to our heads. Just bad luck, I guess. But what you would do is like you'd buy supplies before you'd go out or something like that, and you'd get like preservatives like rice and other things like that, and stuff that you would want to have last a long time. Out at sea. Something my mom did was that she made pasta sauce with sausage and would put them in socks, and she'd like put like all the
Clean socks?
No, dirty socks.
Yeah, that's...
like it'd be like durable socks, and like would store them in like the holds, and it'd have everything like green peppers, other things like that, and so on and so forth. And these things lasted us the entire trip.
No shit.
They were so well preserved. The trip took us like a year and a half.
Wow.
And we were using these jars as currency in certain areas, because there would be some boats where they would trade us fuel.
Wow.
They would trade us videotapes. They would trade us like maps just for some of these jars, because apparently you can't get really good pasta sauce out at sea.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of mileage out of those jars. I mean, it helped that they were delicious, but
Yeah, so you got trading, bartering power with those, as well as going to different islands and countries where you stock up and.
yeah, like when we first started out, we bought my dad went to Restaurant Depot and bought like entire crates of food.
Wow.
Like we had like a good what was it? We had like a good 60 cans of root beer or something like that.
Wow.
Which my dad thought was going to last us like a month or something like that. It barely lasted us 2 weeks.
Wow.
And what do you do with your trash when
whole
you're
ocean.
sailing?
No.
The world's biggest, bluest ocean.
No, you
Whose job was it to throw the trash in the water? Your sister's or yours?
I mean, what we would do is that we would hang on to whatever trash that we make, because you don't produce nearly as much trash as you might think when you're out at sea. Because you're not unwrapping things, you're not doing those things, and all of your cups and stuff, you're not using like recyclable ones, like plastic cups or anything like that. You're using like your own dishes and you're washing and you're making the most of everything. But like out at sea, like you can throw some stuff away, and I won't pretend like I didn't at one point or another. But like,
Would you wave goodbye to the paper plates as you chuck them over?
like I said, we didn't use paper plates.
Wow.
Yeah, you
You
can't.
had to do dishes, man. Like, because that's a plate you could use again.
Wow.
But like, no, like what we would do is that we would have our bags, and when we get into the mainland, we would dump it when we get into an island or any place like that, we'd dump it there. Which does remind me of a story that was like very, very sobering.
Please.
I would have to say. I cannot remember where this was. It was either Bali or somewhere in Indonesia. But I remember the town was constructed mostly on stilts. Mostly because flooding was very frequent there.
Oh wow!
And it was just a very common part of their life.
Almost like a sandbar, huh? Just like not much.
In a way, but like they would have stilts and whenever the flood would happen, they would just go to the second floor and just continue life as normal and just have like boats and like going through it or something like that. I never got to see it, so. And we're taking 2 bags of trash to the dump. And we run into a bunch of kids, younger than me. And they're all clamoring around us saying, Like, let us take your garbage, let us take the trash and all that stuff. And they seemed excited. My dad goes, okay, and hands the bag to them. And the kids grabbed the bag, ran off with it, ripped it open like it was Christmas, and grabbed a carton of milk, like an empty carton of milk, and started playing soccer with it.
Wow.
And I looked at that.
Wow.
I just had this revelation in my head of, what the hell do I have a right to complain about anything?
Yeah.
I didn't really come to terms of how absolutely privileged I was until that specific moment. Like barring the whole like traveling around the world thing, even just like the basic thing of like, at some point when I was 4 years old, I had the right to Pop-Tarts.
Yeah.
Just Pop-Tarts.
By the way, blueberry Pop-Tarts, I can make a case for that.
I mean, to take a like this would be a soccer ball, an empty thing that they could. That's your toy.
You got hacky sack there.
That's your.
Again, this is not a common thing. This is just a very isolated incident with my own experience, of course. Like there's gorgeous places out there that are, dare I say, in many places more civilized than what we have here, because there are so many societies that seem to have their equilibrium figured out, at least by a cursory glance. But again, that is a white man with a tourist's experience.
Yeah.
Did the boat ever flip?
As I mentioned, we did hit sideways once. We never capsized, because if we did, that boat was not getting back up.
Wow.
We did lose our steering in the middle of the ocean, and my dad, the intuitive individual that he was, grabbed a series of ropes and attached a monkey wrench to the rudder and was using a pulley system to steer us back to the main the port when that happened. But we had accidents, like we got struck by lightning once.
Really?
We lost our instruments when that happened. We had our anchor tied up with another boat and it started twisting together, and the only person that was keeping it from crashing into each other was my mom, bridging the two ships together with her body, like trying to keep them pushed apart.
Damn. She got been killed, right?
No, my mom's buff. Like she knows her business.
Wow.
There was the time that I fell into a coral like a shallow coral reef as high tide was coming in and got beaten within an inch of my life. I mean, going around the world, it's scary.
Yeah, I mean,
No, how was your sister looking back on this? Does she still sail, or did she give up on that after that?
It's funny. My sister and I, we had walked away with two very different perspectives about that. For me, it helped me come to appreciate stability. Mm-hmm. Something where like I can be adventurous in my career or creatively, but still have a place I could call home.
Right.
Because that was one thing that I did appreciate about the boat, was that I always had my home. Like we didn't really move from a house or anything like that. And like I wasn't nostalgic for that because we carried the boat with us. Mm-hmm. But my sister developed a absolutely phenomenal wanderlust. Like she wanted to travel everywhere. Wow. She still does. Like she wants to get like a tiny home or something like that. And my sister's an environmental scientist. She's working on her dissertation, getting her doctorate.
Wow, cool.
Wow.
She's wicked brilliant. More so than I will ever care to admit to be. But she's up in Portland right now, trying doing research on soil and the like. I wish I could keep up with her conversations about the stuff that she knows about, and she is way too smart for me.
Wow.
Damn.
What about whales? You ever get hit by a whale?
No, we did meet whales though.
Killer whale?
No, we were killer whales are usually
Blue whales,
north.
humpbacks.
Humpbacks.
They seem to be common. Huh.
Oh,
A lot of humpbacks out
not
there.
common.
So you only met the common whales?
The common whale. Well, it seems like that's the only one-
how pedestrian of you, only seeing common whales.
Because a killer whale would have been cool.
I mean, the humpbacks were
messing
pretty
with
cool
you,
too.
Kevin.
They were really cool too. Like we only got to see them breach once or twice, but the cool thing that we had was that what was a very frequent occurrence in our life was dolphins would very frequently swim by our boat. That's nuts. That's really cool.
Your father made you kill one to prove you were a man?
No, I don't think that happened.
It'd be like this James.
We gotta keep you away from a ship.
Yeah, sorry.
God, how
I would
dare
ram,
you? How
I would
dare
ram
you?
the first damn dolphin I saw. Let him know who's boss. No, nothing.
I mean, I imagine you'd probably do that just to get back at them for a lot of their own messed up habits. Like I know that like I remember reading a story where like a pod of dolphins were playing with like what was it? It was like the baby corpse of a rival family or something like that. They were playing they were playing volleyball with it for apparently just for fun. They could be messed up, but I mean,
Dolphins sound like jerks.
I would say that they are capable.
Wow.
They're capable, but I'm not going to say like lump all of them into that kind of stereotype. That would be rude.
But you didn't see this definitely. You didn't see them do anything like exhibit that sort of behavior, or no?
No, like they were very playful with us, mostly because we were creating a wake in the water for them to skirt by.
Well, that's really exciting.
Yeah, they like to go surfing and stuff like that. They like water sports, of course.
You didn't miss having a dog?
We never had a pet on the boat, but when we moved back to Florida, we had pets for a while. Like we had one golden retriever who passed from leukemia, and then we got 2 more golden retrievers, and they lasted for a good 20 years.
Wow.
Now I have a cat.
What's his name?
Her name's Rika.
Oh, okay, cool.
She's a very communicative cat, which I use for, in part, the voice of a creature in my show, Magus Elgar. I would actually like pair the voice with my own thing, so like Kike would sound like kind of thing, and I would mix that in with my cat's meowing, because she would never shut up when I was recording. At one point, she jumped into my lap while I was recording the voice of Kike and just starts meowing because she was concerned that something had happened, that I was making these very distressing sounds, and that she was just confused, like, why are you making that sound? And I said, all right, you're going to keep meowing at me. So I grab her, turn her around, and hold her up to the microphone and start getting samples of that, and worked with it.
Wow, that's amazing. You know what I mean? I mean, Magus Elgar. So where do you see this show going?
Well, I wanted to start off as an audio drama because in undergrad it was pretty much something I did as a hobby, and it turned out I was pretty good at it. Of course, I was using like really rudimentary stuff like a laptop microphone and a program called WavePad, which only had one audio track to work with. So you kind of make sure you got everything done in one take.
Gotcha.
I got more technology as time went on after I went to college and got my master's degree in film production and a little bit in sound design.
Nice.
And figured I wanted to try my hand at directing again.
Interesting.
This was like my last best chance to see if I could do it, because the last time I tried directing it did not go well.
Oh.
It was a bit of a disaster.
You didn't finish it, or you?
No, I wish I didn't finish it. The film was absolutely nothing I would have wanted to make. It was like a kitchen sink drama where like people were talking about their feelings and all that stuff. And I watched it. I'm like, this is boring. And like it was also kind of a chaotic mess because live action is a completely different beast to shoot on. So I figured I'd try directing one last time to see if I could and focus on something that I understood, which was audio dramas, because I poked around with them when I was younger. And I put everything into it. Like I didn't ask for investors. I didn't ask for advertisers. I didn't ask for anybody else to try and pitch in to my production at first. And I dumped my life savings into this.
Oh no!
Because I believed I believed it would work. I had faith in it. And it turned out really well. Like I've yet to receive really bad reviews about it yet. But in terms of where it would want to go, like I'm planning on working on season 2, which I have like a full writing team working with me now. And they are wicked talented people from all over. But also, I really enjoy the concept of Magus Elgar as like a fantasy comedy, because one thing that people had told me every time that they listened to the show is, I would really love to see this animated. And I had always paced the show with a cartoony feel in mind. And I've been trying to develop making like a series of animated shorts just to see like how it would look, and also to show it to people that may want to pick it up at some point to be the way of the future. And see how it's going. And the animation is going pretty well so far. We're not done yet. I'm working with 3 people from the Has-Been Hotel team, which if you've never seen this thing, I strongly recommend you take a peek at it on YouTube. It's probably one of the most ambitious animated pilots I've seen on YouTube about like a princess of hell building a rehabilitation program to save damned souls to deal with the overpopulation problem in hell.
Oh yeah.
And it's a cartoon, and it's phenomenal. Like it looks like no other cartoon you've ever seen.
Wow.
Now what kind of animation? Hand drawn?
Yes, it's 2D hand drawn animation. I mean, there are programs that you can get away with stuff like that, but we use the same kind of system that Gravity Falls or Star versus the Forces of Evil uses, which are 2 other animation shows on Disney. But yeah, we've got like a skeleton crew. We've got like 4 people animating this thing. One person's doing the character designs, one person's background, 2 people are animators. But I do want to ask you gentlemen, have you gotten a chance to listen to Magus Elgar yourselves?
Yeah, I thought it was kind of trippy. I sampled it on. Is that on YouTube? Is that where we heard it? Yeah.
We've got the first 3 episodes for free on YouTube, and usually like the first like 2 to 5 minutes is like a really good starting point of the first episode.
You want to play the first 30 seconds of it?
Yeah.
The flavor for it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You just put it on YouTube.
Yeah, just go on YouTube. If you like pull it up on your computer or something like that, you can play it. Just look up Magus Elgar on YouTube.
Wow.
It should be like the first episode. You might need to skip a little bit because we have our little opening ramp up or whatever.
Steve Joyner says, "Are you guys on the air?"
No, he corrected it. He corrected it and said, "Yeah, I can see and hear us."
So he did. Okay, yeah.
I'm 30
blah
seconds
blah
ahead
blah
of you.
blah. Okay.
I wasn't going to bring it to your attention unless he couldn't find us, but no, we're on the air.
Oh, chaoticradio.us, Bernard said.
Oh, well, that's not the same one that I had thought. Ah, okay. I see.
We could do that. Now I go.
You go to YouTube. I mean, you could always just go to maguselgar.com. We've got the YouTube link right in there.
Okay.
MAGUS space ELGAR.
MAGUS
ELGAR.
All one word?
No, Magus Elgar. Magus is a type of spellcaster.
Elgar?
ELGAR.
Okay. Oh, Magnus Elgar podcast? What?
Magnus. I don't know why people continue doing that, but here we go. Let me pull it up on YouTube and the like. It will be fantastic, I swear to you.
How long does it take to make with just the simple, like you said, the 2D animation? The just
Well, we're still trying to practice a little bit.
how much time? I mean, just to get a minute or 2 minutes of.
Well, we're still kind of starting off. Like with the skeleton crew, it takes a lot longer. It's taken us like 2 months or so, mostly because I had to completely redesign all the characters to fit for an animated setting, which
Because I've always been fascinated with animation, and I'd like to do some claymation stuff myself. But
Claymation's
do you
fun.
model the drawing to the audio?
No. Well, what you do first is you come up with the character designs, and then you make a storyboard. With the storyboard, you let me just skip a little bit in here. Okay. Boop, boop, boop. You make the storyboard, and then you do something called acting smackers, where you act out like the movements of the characters and the like. But typically with the storyboard, you have the script all planned out, and you voice act just the dialogue to get what you need and get the pacing right. Then you start going towards the actual animation part, and then once that's done, you sound design it. Some people sound like some companies will like sound design as they're making everything, which is very challenging. Let me see here. Here we go. So here you go. Go ahead and play it however you like.
Magic is everywhere throughout the world of Hoth, though each spell comes with a price. Without totems to channel their power, one could easily find themselves covered head to toe in symbols from dimensions unknown.
Look at this, Pat.
Sputtering about a beast with 1,000,000 eyes. But thankfully, our tale does not follow a descent into such madness. It begins with the death of a sorcerer who was nice enough to do that for us already. Now this...
The blue goes with the audio.
Cursed eyes, get off me!
You'll have
That
plenty
pattern.
of time to explain this later.
Sound wave.
Get out of here.
You don't have to tell me twice. Later, then.
Hold your hands high. Remember, magic is
You always
about
picture it in your mind with the sound, audio, sound mix.
I declare that this is a terrible idea.
Special
That's
effect.
the spirit, acolyte. Incantale can't maintain this dragon form for long. Just remember the root of all magic. No. Incorrect, Uno.
Wow, where do you get all that
Magic
audio?
is derived from being offensive. You have to insult
hear the
laws
magic.
of nature and the ancient tongue of fright. I have to what? Insult the dragon. Honestly, I'm talking to myself here. Magus Elgar, a little help. Patience, Uno. I have to examine these scrolls before they get burned. It's not every day a sorcerer actually writes something down. Everything about this is awful. Well, you wanted the sorcerer to stop being so mouthy. I swear, always changing your mind like a two-headed serpent at a buffet. Element, this is the kind of monkey paw thing you should expect with comments like that.
Now, into 2 minutes, I mean, how long? This is
How is that possible?
all that music and soundtrack added. You just keep layering.
Well, you can stop it now if you want to.
Okay. There's so much sound. There's so much audio there.
Yeah, the cool thing is that you could put this in like if you listen to it in your car, it's got like full stereo. It's got like a full like it's very
Like
immersive.
a sense around sound.
I mean, I didn't do a 5.1 mix, but because I didn't have the budget for that kind of thing, but also because most people would probably just listen to this on their phones, much like just now. But you could put this in your car and like listen to it, and it does surround you. Like it is a very immersive experience with the sound design. This took me a lot longer than it probably should have. It took me about 2 to 3 years to make, mostly because this was my hobby most for that. You know, you have a day job to do work with, and
Right.
I dedicated a lot of my time to work on this.
So it's a
And
passion project.
It was a passion project, mostly again to see if I could direct.
Are you losing that passion?
No, absolutely not. I definitely don't feel like I'm going to be losing this passion anytime soon because I really want to keep going with it. But what I would do is that I would take the dialogue, piece that together, then I would get the music. I'd probably either use stock or find a composer later on, which we had Andrew Maas doing our composing and APM doing some of our music. And then most people in audio dramas, what they'll do is they'll go to like a stock sound effect library and piece together the sound effects there. And that works fine. But I did not want to do that. I went to the Foley stage and I recorded like a good 80% of all the sound effects that you heard in there. In fact, a lot of the magic effects were me experimenting with a combination of some stock sounds and me messing around with certain effects on the Foley stage and the like, which was a real trip because one thing that always drives me nuts about movies and cartoons and the like is when the sound design uses a stock sound effect that you've heard before.
Yeah.
Like the Wilhelm scream.
Well, that's an in joke.
That's an homage. Yeah. Ben
That's an
Burtt
homage.
started that from Star Wars.
But a great example of this is a movie called The Babadook. Have you ever seen The Babadook?
Yeah, the Australian movie with the mother and
They're starting to do midnight showings of that film.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal film. Like, it's extremely well written. It's absolutely well paced, and it is most of all terrifying. Mostly because it really like sets you on edge the whole time. But there's one part in the movie where they start to reveal the monster. And the monster gives a big growling sound, and the lady looks terrified. And then you hear the monster make a noise to make it sound like a big roar or something. And I look at it and I go, that is a pterodactyl. They used a stock pterodactyl sound effect. And I'm like, this whole experience has been ruined. It just takes me out of it immediately. Meanwhile, you have on the other side of the spectrum, you have the movie Annihilation, which was made by the guy who directed Ex Machina.
Yes.
Which projects itself as a sci-fi, but it is one of the more unsettling movies I've ever seen.
Annihilation with Natalie Portman. I'll watch it tonight.
There's a part in it where they have this monster where it's a bear that has been getting mutated by this field that they're in, where its DNA is getting reconfigured. And this bear at one point ends up killing one of the characters. And the sound this thing makes, it mixes the sound of a bear with the woman's last few cries for help before she dies. And it's so chilling because the bear is using it to lure the other people towards him so that he can eat them.
Wow.
The Ruins does that as well really well.
Yeah.
Where the plants use the sound that, yeah.
Yeah, like it's nuts. Like that's the important thing about sound design is that like if you end up just doing a half effort on your sound effects or your sound design, it can really pull you out of it. But nobody, and I mean nobody, forgets what a velociraptor from Jurassic Park sounds like.
True.
Yeah.
Nobody forgets what a blaster from Star Wars sounded like.
Ed 209 in RoboCop, which is a slowed down. The Ed 209 warming up and slowing down. The guy who won the Oscar for that's a slowed down VCR.
Yeah.
When the guns are going down, that's a VCR from the 80s being slowed down.
Yeah, see, the crazy thing about sound design is that you can, with visuals, it's a little harder to trick people. Like, you have to do a lot of optical illusions and it takes a significant amount of effort. But for sound,
Right.
there's only a certain amount of fidelity that our ears can take. So you can cheat quite a few things. That's kind of the whole thing about the magic of Foley is that, so much of what you're hearing is one guy in a studio recording a sledgehammer to some melons.
True.
to get the sound right, like true Gallagher fashion.
I'm just gonna say true Gallagher mode.
That man would have been a fantastic sound designer if he went on for Foley or whatever. But I would say that out of all the sound effects I've heard throughout my life, my favorite one had to have been from the movie Sunshine. Now, if you're not familiar,
Danny Boyle, amazing movie.
Yeah, like if you're not familiar with Sunshine, it's about a group of scientists who are flying to the sun to drop a bomb in it to restart it. Mm-hmm. Now that sounds like a really cheesy, really cheesy summer blockbuster in fashion.
Chris Evans, amazingly touching.
Yeah, but it looks like a really cheesy film on paper, but you watch it, they take it very seriously. Wow. And they put so much effort into the acting and the presentation for it. It's one of my favorite sci-fi movies, but there's a single sound in it called the Icarus distress beacon.
The flight of Icarus with a stress beacon.
The distress beacon is this very woeful chime, which I think I've got it on my phone that I use as my text tone or something. Let me pull that up real quick.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite sounds because it tells so much of the story. Because you could have just gone with like a boop, 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 boop.
Was it used before, or was this just totally created for this?
Totally unique for this.
Wow. Hold that up to the microphone. I want to hear that. Wow, that's like, I thought the THX was something else. That, I'll never forget
trippy.
that.
It's trippy. Because that's like the one thing from that movie that stuck with me. Of course, the movie gets a little wacky at the end, but I still enjoy it.
Like, how would you recreate that? That is just so original. Like, you can't even.
They had to use some kind of radio oscillation or something like that. I wish I could figure out how to piece that together. I'd be putting it in everything. Yeah. But like as a sound designer, you spend a lot of time like listening to those kinds of things. Of like when somebody does like a truly phenomenal sound, it sticks with you. And you're like, I want to hear this somewhere else, or you want to try using it somewhere. Like, what's a great one? One that's like a underappreciated as like sound design are firearms, because it's firearms. Like when you just have a gun, like make a bang sound, you're fine. Yeah. But some people go way above and beyond that, so that the gun sounds. It resonates with you. It sticks with you.
Yeah.
And like the difference between a pitiful sounding gun and like a really like good one is night and day. Like I mostly pay attention to this in like in video games, because you hear that kind of gunfire all the time, and that makes a difference. But if I was just select something from a movie, have you ever seen the movie The Expendables?
Yeah.
There's one gun in that movie that practically steals the show, and everyone gets sucked into a singularity upon this thing showing up, and just you ignore everything else. And that's when Terry Crews walks out with an automatic shotgun. I forget the name of this gun, but the sound this thing makes
Big
is
old
pure.
blasters,
It's
man.
pure sex. Just
Yeah.
it's phenomenal. Like a friend of mine, as soon as I described that to them, like where I'm like this gun is better than sex. The way that this thing sounds, she goes, I refuse to believe this. And she starts listening to it, and she. The scene happens, and he comes in with a shotgun. She goes, "Oh my God, I am sorry for doubting you."
Yeah, and it's automatic, just one blast after another.
Just
And it has the
man,
balls
it's
and
fantastic.
the bass volume. I remember that. Yeah.
So like I would think about that whenever I'm working on my sound design of like I want to make something really impactful. Like the sound effect that you heard in there was supposed to be the dragon breathing lightning that's on fire. Now, of course, you can't find lightning that's on fire in reality, obviously. So what I ended up having to do was finding a couple of effects of like some electricity arcing. I had at one point I had malfunction. I had a malfunction on my theremin while I was playing around with something like that, and it made this very sound, like really crackling. It was a very unpleasant sound. But if I drag that into my program, I use Pro Tools, by the way. Wow. And stripped out some of the more unpleasant aspects of the frequency in an equalizer, like an EQ 7-band, like some basic thing. I was able to combine that with like an explosion that I had found, and like I got like a recording from a fireplace over at a friend's house that I recorded to add into that, and left a really good impact when I finally got the beat to go for it. And I had to do a lot of layering for that, like in almost everything. Like even with just the voice of Kake, which is this little reptilian abomination called a replica. I was doing some layering with my voice and my cat's voice and a couple of other chirpy little sounds that you would normally hear on stock animal sounds that I could take little pieces of. But the important thing is that when you're doing the stock sounds, that you're not like just taking the sound by itself. You're taking pieces of it, little segments of it. Like, oh, I like the sound of this rhino, but I don't need the whole thing. I just need the very start of it. Like just the start of it starting its sound, and then mix it into like the sound of an eagle and then a sound of a pig, and it sounds completely unique from there. This, of course, is not a tried and true, entirely reliable method, because sometimes you can get some absolutely awful things. Like you put it in together and you're like, I don't think I can use that one. That sounds like two turtles mating, which incidentally is the sound they use to make the velociraptor making a squealing sound. That is a turtle mating. Be sure to have that as a fun fact for your kids, folks.
Yeah. Yeah, that gurgling, that velociraptor, that like the way they purr, you know.
I was more talking about like the squealing sound, like the harsh like sound. Yeah, that is a turtle going at it.
That's too funny.
Oh, you'd be surprised how many sound effects are just things you would not expect.
Tell us.
Because I remember that on even on Sesame Street with I don't have an animal sound. The turtle comes up, the puppet, you know, is like, I don't have an animal sound, you know. The little
that is a lie.
Speak and spell, you know. You got the little turn. You got cow, chicken, dog, cat.
There's like at some point it's like you got one of those speak and spells that lands on giraffe, and it's just it's just the sound designer working on the speak and spell saying, "You really are taking the piss."
Yeah. You sound just like a giraffe. Yeah.
But in terms of, sorry, I blanked for a second about what I was saying.
With animals with no sound.
Now before that.
That'd be a good album cover, huh? Animals with no sound.
Oh, yeah.
That sounds
and the cow says nothing.
That sounds existential as all heck. It's just all the whole album is just a first time music studies major crying into the wrong end of a tuba.
Yeah. That's funny. Interesting. So where do you see Magus Elgar going?
Well, ideally, I would love for it to become an animated series. Mm-hmm. I feel like I've got enough content to go in there and present enough. I'd have to present enough new ideas for people to be like, that's worth picking up. But
you've got to create visuals for the characters, right?
Yeah, which I have.
You design what they look like.
Yeah, actually, I can show you right here. We just finished working on the design sheet for. We're working on landing down a design sheet for Kake, the replica that I mentioned earlier. And There we go. This is some of the sketch work of Kakei. These are all different. Now, when you're designing characters, you have to come up with a bunch of different passes of different ideas that might work. Right. And you end up doing a
first draft, second draft, so how many drafts it takes to get the final
exactly. In fact, the first time that we had drafted everything, I'm like, this is perfect. This is great. This is great. And then I went to the MET, which is it was like a convention for animators. And I started talking to some people, and I met one of the people over at Frederator Studios, which, if you're not familiar with them, they made The Fairly Odd Parents, and most recently they made Castlevania on Netflix. Think of how schizophrenic a repertoire that is.
Yeah.
And I started talking to the guy, and he looked at all of my character designs, and he said, "Yeah, no, that these are really standing out for me."
Wow.
Oh gosh. It's like everything you've lived, everything that you have worked towards is just bland in my eyes. I'm like, well, then what should I do? He goes, well, you're going to have to work on developing your own style, your own idea, because I've seen all this before. So I went back. I went back to the animators, and I told him, like, guys, I'm so sorry.
That stinks.
Well, no, that I'd never at any point, I will never blame them for that, because I was the one that was kind of drawing them in that direction. Mostly because I had never really drawn anything before. I'm dysgraphic. I can't draw. You ask me to draw a straight line, and I'll just squiggle all over the place. But I went to them, and I'm like, guys, I'm sorry. I led you astray. I think we need to start over. And they were so on board with it. They were like, okay, let's think of this. Let's think this over again. And we redesigned the characters, and they look a lot better. They look fantastic now. And they look quite distinct for these characters. To get this off the ground, but like so much of that is just workshopping. Like you'll get like 8 different versions of the same character. Sorry. You'll get 8 versions of the same character, and you end up playing Mr. Potato Head, where you're like, I like the eyes of this, I like the hair of that, I like the jacket of that. And like the funny thing is that probably the character that I showed you, Kakei, was one of the more difficult ones to design, because one of the jokes about Kakei was that you did not know what he looked like, you just knew that he looked horrifying. Because the whole story behind Kakei is that he's this chimeric abomination that was the result of an alchemical experiment gone wrong. And if I recall, the description was he was the cross between a horntail, a frill lizard, and a majestic baby phoenix, which I would like to direct you to a single baby bird of any kind that looks majestic, and I will pay you lots of money. Because the joke was that was our only real description we had of Kakei. Like he secretes fluids all the time, and he's like kind of sitting there like almost like he's having a seizure, just And despite that he makes all these cute noises, everyone's like, no, this thing's terrifying. I want nothing to do with it. So I bring this, I present this to my character designer, and she's like, where do I go with this? I'm like, use your imagination.
Use your imagination, Peter Pan. Yeah.
This is amazing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wow, you know what I mean? I mean, what would you read when you were on the boat for those years? What would you read? Would you bring comics? Would you bring books? You know, obviously a sci-fi fan, you know?
Well, we had about 60 VHS tapes.
On a boat. VHS, dude.
VHS.
That takes up so much space.
Yeah, it took up a whole cabinet for that.
You just hurl the ones you didn't like into the ocean?
God, no, we would watch them until we developed Stockholm syndrome.
Sea turtles could die if they did that.
How many times did you watch? What was the crappiest movie there, and how many times did you watch it?
Oh I mean, I wouldn't say crappy is a very strong word, but I know the one movie that we ended up watching the most was Independence Day.
Wow.
We must have watched that like
Welcome to Earth.
60 times or something like that. But like,
Are you never daily? Oh, good.
we watched a lot of those kinds of films. Like we didn't have the original Jurassic Park, but we had The Lost World,
Ugh.
which was
No, thank you.
yeah. I mean, we watched it a lot too because what was your alternative?
You got kicked off the gymnastics team? Oh, what a crappy movie that is.
We had the Fifth Element. We had
I kind of dig Fifth Element. Luke Perry's in it.
Fifth Element's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's fun.
I really love the style.
I had the head from that. The soldier. Remember they'd shake their head and their true form.
The Mangalores.
Yeah, I had a head.
That's
It
nice.
says Kennedy Phillips, who's seen the movie more times than you can count. What's your favorite scene in Independence Day?
I think it would be the part where Brent Spiner gets grabbed by the tentacle,
Yes.
smacked up
Killed
against the
Brent
wall, and he's
Spiner.
like, "Release me."
By the way, the sequel is terrible.
Yeah,
The female lead is a talking water heater
let's-
from outer space.
but let's be entirely fair. We did not have many high standards to start off from the beginning.
You and Will Smith,
Which is-
man.
Will Smith is one of the few things that elevates that movie.
Well,
But
you know-
even then, you have to acknowledge that Independence Day is exactly what you're paying for. Like I can acknowledge in the many years of Stockholm syndrome I had with that movie. That,
Wow.
yes, it is not that great of a movie. I still like it. There are tons of films that each of you have that is objectively terrible, but you still like it because none of us have standards.
Would you watch it on the ocean on the 4th of July? Would you put on Independence
Yes,
Day?
we-
Yay!
I'm pretty sure that you didn't need to be out at the ocean to have the compulsion to do that.
Were there any movies so bad that you would try to swim home?
The temptation was real. One movie that we had was we occasionally got to go to some rental stores out at sea because there were like
Be
some.
kind, rewind. Don't bring your tapes, not rewind them, and especially in those other countries.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And,
what the hell, boat boy?
So we would rent a couple of movies, and we ended up getting to keep one at one point while we were in Malta, which is just south of Sicily.
Where they shot Popeye.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's
Popeye
right.
was shot in the island of Malta.
Yeah.
So Malta's by Sicily.
Yes, it's
I
south
did
of
not
Sicily.
know that. Okay.
We ended up renting a couple of movies, and at the time, as a kid, we ended up getting two movies, and we were only allowed to pick one. The two movies were the Pound Puppies movie,
Wow.
which I have to say, as much as this is going to sound ridiculous, was the better of the two movies we got, because the other one was Annie 2.
Oh,
They
God.
made it Annie too?
It exists, and it is a bonkers movie. Because in Annie
Annie 2, I've never heard-
2, Daddy Warbucks is about to get knighted and has to go to
Sorry, you keep going. That's my brother Donald. I'll catch up with him in a sec. Go ahead.
Yeah. In Annie 2, Daddy Warbucks is going to Buckingham Palace to be knighted for the first time, and Annie's going on a whirlwind adventure to go and enjoy the finer things of England, where she gets caught up in a Russian conspiracy and has to disable a nuclear missile.
This has to be a made-for-TV movie. Was this made for TV?
I have no idea. I only have I have a copy of it. It's a PAL VHS tape, and it's a horrible movie.
What are you doing talking to Don during the show?
He's calling about my audition. Hello? What's up?
He's got an audition to do right after the show
Oh, what's he auditioning for?
for a commercial.
I've had to do a couple of those myself, because that's where like all the voice acting money happens to be, and that is a cutthroat business.
Yeah.
That is really hard to do because like I'm trying to find an agent right now, and it's really like who you know. Like all of my voice actors who worked on Mega Selgar have been helping me find people, which that's surreal. But like I was working for a short while on Voices.com. To get some auditions. You have to do like 30, 40, 50 auditions a day just to get the hope of getting one.
gosh.
It's nuts.
That's, my friend, he's pretty established now. His name's Quentin Flynn.
Oh, I love Quentin Flynn. He played Raiden in Metal Gear Solid 2.
Yeah.
He played Axel in Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
He's great.
I used to hang out with him. I really didn't know what he did for a living, and then I said voice actor, and then my son goes, "What? You know Quentin Flynn? Oh yeah,
Yeah, Quentin Flynn's great. Like he's played some pretty awesome characters.
he caught on, and I got to get him on the show because he does quite a few characters now, and just going to the gaming circuit conventions.
I can tell you, if you do, a great way to aggravate him is to ask him if he's avoided drowning. Because there's a line in Metal Gear Solid 2, like one of his breakout roles.
Yeah.
At least I'm assuming. I don't have an IMDb near me right now. And there's a line in it where the character that he plays as Raiden just finishes this mission where like they're getting out of this flooding oil rig, and he talks to the colonel. He's like, "Colonel, we've managed to avoid drowning. Good job, Raiden."
What are you guys talking about?
Quentin Flynn.
Oh yeah.
He's gotten so much better since, because like that is. Let's be fair. That was a script that was very difficult to sound natural for, because Metal Gear Solid 2 was a bit of a mess script wise.
What is that? What's this? A urine sample?
It's my urine sample. I'm not gonna let you drink it. I'm gonna drink it myself.
Gosh.
I will only drink my own urine.
Thankfully, I have never gotten to a point where I had to do that when we were going around the world. That's why we
Would
had
you
a
drink
water
each
maker.
other's urine just to make sure?
I heard about that. People getting shipwrecked and out to sea, drifting on a piece of, floating wood and being trapped on an island, fresh water.
I mean, there are some ways that you can get it to work, but yes, do not ever drink salt water. No matter how thirsty you are, you will start to hallucinate and you will become more thirsty.
Did that happen to you? Did you ever drink? Okay.
No, but I did get dehydrated once. When I was in Bali, we were out at a.
Bali was a stripper on the island.
We were out at
Nothing.
We were at a bazaar, shopping for fruit and things like that. We had to drive there on a bus. We get there and I start getting cone vision. Like the space around like my peripheral vision just slowly starts to shrink down.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there like just kind of like batting at the dirt, not understanding what was happening, because I didn't tell my parents or anything like that.
How old were you?
I was about 9, and my dad thought I was just playing with the dirt, so he's like, "Knock it off." And then I lose consciousness. And my dad like grabs me, tosses me over his shoulder, and has us run to a store and just starts force feeding me Pepsi, which
That sounds like a dream.
it was not, because like I'm already not a huge fan of Pepsi myself.
Because you drank so much of it on the boat?
No, we mostly drank water and stuff because we ran out of that soda pretty quickly.
What kind of root beer though? You mentioned guys were drinking root beer.
Just some off-brand thing. But anyway, the Pepsi, the problem is that like in the soda that you drink in all these countries are only as good as the water that's attached to it. And usually their water is, like some areas, the water's harder to come by, or it's not very good quality. Right. So they have to make up for it by adding a lot of syrup to it.
Oh, no.
So you drink Coke here, and it's like, okay, this is fine. Or you drink Pepsi here, and it's like, it's a little sugary. But you go to, like, drink a Coke in like, Tahiti, and, like, Tahiti's got great water. That's a bad example. Like, if you end up going to, like, the Red Sea or something like that, if you're going to, like, Djibouti, or Sudan, and where water isn't like the water might not be nearly as pure as some other areas, or they can't get the filtration down right, and your teeth squeak after drinking a can of this stuff. Wow. That's how much syrup is in there. So like I'm drinking this syrup saturated Pepsi, and the first thing I end up doing upon waking back up is projectile vomiting across the wall.
All right.
Yeah, that was the time I lost consciousness because of lack of water.
Did they on the island? Did they have bottled water? Like,
I mean, we didn't have any. Well, like they had it. Like they had plenty of like bottled. They had like tap and other things like that, and they had wells and so on and so forth. There were a couple of bits of bottled water, but at the time we just get liquid in the boy.
yeah.
You're not thinking about it, so like. You end up doing some pretty crazy things at the last minute.
Interesting. You know, that's kind of exciting, actually. You know what I mean? I mean, when you think about going around the world, what was the highlight and what was the lowest light of spending all that time in a boat?
The lowest point that I had was we were becalmed on the way to the Red Sea. It was a 2-week leg where we did not see a single body of land. We were running out of supplies, running out of fuel. We had to mostly go by sailing. And what really was unfortunate about that was that the wind stopped completely for 3 days.
So you were just sitting there?
Just sitting there. We were going half a knot, which was about, I don't know, maybe 2 miles an hour at most. I don't know, like probably less. Like we were not going anywhere. And it was so hot that everybody just dropped all pretense of dignity and just stripped down to their underwear and were just kind of sitting there baking.
Wow.
Like breathing was uncomfortable. Like it was at that point where the heat of it, you felt like you were in a sauna.
Right.
And going downstairs didn't help. Drinking water didn't help. And you thought you were in purgatory.
Wow.
And when you're in moments like that, you start having those unfortunate thoughts that come when you have nothing to do and no way to break the monotony. And that is the very real thought of, if I died here, would anyone notice? Would anyone care?
Boy, that's dark.
How long would it take for people to find us? Would they ever find us?
That's crazy.
9 years old, by the way. 9 years old.
Damn.
And what do you do when you're fighting with your family? Every kid fights with his family. When you were sick of your mom, dad, and sister, where would you go? What would you do?
You'd have to get over it pretty quickly.
Like,
I think the best example was, and I'm pretty sure that this is an embarrassing story. Whatever. We had one toilet on the boat. Naturally, this could be a problem. In case if any type of if anything happened to disrupt the structural and functional integrity of said toilet. At that point was the point that I had made a mistake and I accidentally broke the toilet.
Oh, man.
Now, I go out to the cockpit and tell my mom I broke the toilet. Because I didn't want to tell my dad, because my dad was unconscious about 3 feet away from the toilet, and he was running on 3 hours of sleep for the past 2 weeks. This was not a good idea. Because at 3 hours of sleep, you start becoming delirious.
Wow.
And so I really did not want to wake my dad up early. So I tell my mom, what do I do? I broke it, but I got to fix it before he wakes up. He's going to be so mad. She goes, well, you're just going to have to figure something out. And I go back over to the bathroom, and I'm like getting ready to, fix it with my bare hands if I have to. And my dad is already awake, doubled over at the toilet, already fixing it. And so I'm sheepish, and I don't want to acknowledge that I was to blame about this. That this is just the way boats work. This is how this would go. So I kind of scratch my head and I go, it's broken, huh? My dad gets up and just chases after me with the full intention of strangling me. I move through the ship all the way to the back end, to the bow of the ship, and bury myself into the anchor room before my mom says, before my mom says, Kevin, stop! It's not his fault. He goes, I don't care. Let me have this.
You weren't tempted to blame your sister?
No, I wasn't that kind of person.
Not yet. Another 20 days in the sleep.
What about you? You wouldn't do that.
Hell no.
Yeah, I didn't like the idea of blaming my sister for a lot of things. I mean, every kid does at some point or something like that. But it always left a foul taste in my mouth.
He's not ruling it out. He's just saying it would be a foul taste.
I mean, if I did do it at some point, I probably don't remember it. Though I will say I have given my sister a hard time on multiple occasions. But in my defense, she probably deserved it at the time.
What does she think of Magus Elgar?
Well, it was definitely outside of her field of expertise. But also there was a lot of things where she would watch this and be like, that's not how science works. I'd be like, I know. But she was really astonished that I was able to pull this one through, because I'd never made anything of this caliber to this degree and like devote so much of my being into making a show like this. And when she saw this, like, for the longest time, my sister didn't really understand the purpose of what I did. Because, like, she's going into science, she's going into real things that have a real impact on the world, for the environment and everything around it. And what was I doing? I was making dumb cartoons and poop jokes. I was banging pots together.
Never rule out a good poop joke.
I was banging pots together for a paycheck to make a movie sound less fake.
Did you do ADR?
I do ADR, yeah.
What films you worked on?
Quite a few. I worked on Spiders 3D, which was a...
Oh no, I know Tibor Tatax, who directed it.
Yeah, I was one of the dialogue editors on that one.
Wow, with Krista Campbell and a couple other people.
Yeah.
Patrick, what's his name from... didn't it star the guy from Melrose Place?
I don't remember. It's been a while. It was a while ago. But like I worked on Alpha and Omega at Crest Animation, which that was an experience. I've worked on a bunch of films. Like I worked on a film called The Institute that was starring and was directed by James Franco. Mm-hmm. Which was like his own little passion project. I recently did a VR project called Delusion Lies Within, where I did the sound effects for all the monsters.
Well, how'd you do the sound of the spiders? How'd you get that?
I didn't do the sound design for the spiders. I just did the dialogue edit. So like I got all the people talking to make it sound less bad.
Yeah, the sound of that was pretty.
That is an oversimplification of my job.
What other horror or sci-fi movies did you work on sound-wise?
Well, one horror movie that I worked on, I was part of the entire post-production process, was my thesis film, Little Goat, which is buried deep, deep, deep in the dregs of the internet, about a girl born with horns who is taken to an orphanage where the owner is using plastic surgery on the girls to make them pretty and then sells them to the highest bidder. It's really intense stuff. And it's like this whole thing's like an allegory for the film industry, because the director of that was such a delightful nutcase. I would equate him to being the equivalent to our class as like the David Lynch of our class.
Did he ever make anything professional since?
I mean, he's worked on a couple of things. I couldn't reference them to you now, but
was he a director off the record? I mean,
yeah, he was a director.
The stuff he did though, was as a director after that.
Yes, yes. It was like he usually does some like pretty intense stuff that is very difficult to stomach. But when he is at his best, it can be it kind of resonates with you, because the feeling that resonates with you might not be a good feeling, but it could be an important one because it makes you think about it. And it was like that film was an incredibly divisive film at our school at the time, because it was like absolutely nothing like what Chapman normally shows and those sorts of things. But like editing that, sound designing that was an absolute blast. Because you had to come like one of my favorite sounds that we did in that was that the villain Mr. Novska, who was hoping to create his magnum opus on the face of a child, as messed up as that sounds, had this drill that he would use to lobotomize the children to make them behave. And it was this like really gross looking hand drill that we had to design. I got to work with Michael Martinez on that, and he does 4D audio now for like the ones where like the chairs kind of like vibrate and all that stuff.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
It's cool stuff. But I've gotten to work on a handful of sci-fi and horror, but I never got to really be the forefront on a lot of them, which is why I was so excited about Megas Elgar, because I finally got to design my own stuff.
Your own baby, yeah.
Because I think one of my favorite sounds I got to design in Megas Elgar was in episode 8, we introduce an antagonist named Acolyte Pythagatha.
Wow.
She is a mathemagician.
Mathemagician.
A magus that uses math magics to attack to do attacking and all that stuff. And she's fighting against one of our leads, Udo Malaki, in a magic duel. And all of her spells are math references. If you actually know like a little bit about math, you know what she's referencing when she casts her spell. And not only did I have to make the sound effect of the magic spell that's being cast, I had to make the spell that would sound as appropriate for the math that's being used. Because like math has this own like kind of frequency being used and the like, and I had to break it down to the waveform. Where one point, one of my favorite spell that I got to work on was a spell called Riemann Zeta, which I used a saw blade at like a workshop or whatever, and I had the sound of the saw blade spinning and like warming up and spinning down, and I threw that into a bunch of plugins and absolutely destroyed the sound and reconstructed it, and the effect that came off was this. It sounded nuts. I loved it. And then, like, of course, when Udo finally gets hit by a spell, I had this really loud, kind of like he gets separated and then reconstructed very quickly and hits the ground.
Wow.
It's episode 8's probably one of our more ambitious sound designed episodes. Just because we had this magic duel, we needed to make it sound interesting. Because how exactly do you sound design an audio drama for a fight scene? It's difficult because it's just a guy. What do you do? Like you have a guy walk up and says, "I'm punching you in the face now." Oh dear, he's punched me in the face. I'd better kick him in the nads. Oh dear, he'll have done that also. Well timed. It sounds unnatural because like if you saw that stuff in real life, you're like, just hit the guy. You just be like, just stop talking. So what you end up having to do is you end up having to find really clever ways to portray the action.
Without what just happened,
without restating too much of what's going on. So with a Coliseum setting, you've got like commentators talking back and forth about everything that's going on and them getting into it. Yeah. Which what was funny was that we the two commentators we had was my co-director Andrew Cornell and our narrator Ricardo Cabral. Which Ricardo the narrator is probably one of my favorite running gags in the whole show. Because the narrator is a physical person in the show. Like I'm not sure if you had heard it. The narrator starts talking his spiel in the first episode and then gets tackled by Udo. Like he's actually a person in the show who's running around trying to narrate everything that's going on. Wow. And he's almost always like getting his fingers somewhere in the story so that he can narrate what's going on. And we just decided, you know what, let's have him be one of the commentators. And we had this running joke where like the narrator does not have a name. Like, because, we don't need one because he's the narrator. So at some point, the commentator leans over and goes, I'm so sorry, I never got your name. What was your name again? The narrator goes, that's fine, I get that a lot. Oh, wow. So the announcer just tosses up his hands and just starts calling him anything. Like it's like, yeah, it's like, and what a great time to be here for dueling, Craig. That's not my name. No, that's fine, Bob. Let's just keep going. It's like that's also not my name.
Okay there, Jasper. That's not my name either.
At one point, he's like, "You're doing this on purpose."
That's funny. That's interesting. You know, I mean, wow.
It was a lot of fun working with Ricardo Cabral because he would give us like so many different takes. But what was really interesting was that he I had made a minor flub on my end when I was doing the casting, and that was with the narrator. The narrator was supposed to have a lot of scenes where he would talk a lot, like conversationally. Because doing a narration is different than talking how I am now. Like, while I'm in this conversational tone, it's different.
Right,
But when you're narrating, you need to make sure that you're as charismatic as possible.
Wow.
And make sure that your voice is buttery smooth to go upon your toast.
Masterclass, bravo.
Yeah, exactly.
So narrating and voice acting narrating and having a conversational tone are two different fields. And Ricardo was phenomenal with his narration, but when he did the conversational stuff, he was just a trifle off because I don't think he had many opportunities to do that kind of voice acting. So when we had him do those scenes where we had to have him break his narrator visage and just start losing it, it was really funny. Because he sounds like a guy who's not used to not being a narrator, which added a new dynamic to the character that I absolutely adored, barring the fact that I had forgot to add a conversational line for the character to do.
Wow.
I ran with it, and I would not change a thing from that point. Because I mean, you know, we had a couple of first time flubs for this because I had never done an audio drama with other people. It would always just be me doing all the voices all at once. So when I was doing this professional thing, I'd say to myself, I don't want to do all the voices. I don't want to do all the voices because you know, that would sound a little bit self-serving.
Yeah.
So you know, I hired a bunch of people and. One or two of them had not done voice acting before. But I was more interested in the tonal quality of their sound, of how they spoke, rather than how good they were at acting. This had some problems. The one that I would direct to is my good friend Christopher Moore, who, God bless him, played Udo Malaki, who was our second lead in the show, who plays Udo Malaki is a acolyte to Magus Elgar, who all that he wants to do while he's learning magic is to not die. That is his only goal. He is not really interested in becoming a masterful magus or anything like that. He just wants to get in there to not die. Because you kind of gotta learn how to do your magic.
A worthy goal, yeah.
And with that, Udo had to sound a little sardonic, very flat, and be like the straight man to Magus Elgar, who's all over the place. So I had Chris play Udo Malaki for our test episode, and I loved him. And I set up a casting for Udo to find a new one, and I could not find anyone that sounded like Chris. And like as soon as you hear him, like the guy is a level of baritone that is unnatural to a person of his appearance.
Wow.
Like his normal speaking voice is down in this region at all times.
And I'm like, I don't know how you're doing it, but I love it.
That's cool.
However, I call him up and I say, I would love for you to play my second lead in this show. And he's like, wow, that's great. But I've never acted before. And I go, it's okay, we'll get you acting lessons. I get him acting lessons as part of his paycheck. And the first day comes where we start doing our recording. I was recording him first so I can get my practice down with him. And it was just me and him at first. And we're having him record one of the first one of the first lines in the first episode, which was all it says is that I could use a little privacy. It's a stairwell. All the same. Very well, I know when I'm not needed. And the narrator leaves. So I say, all right, man, all you got to do is just give a little bit of a sense of awkwardness. You want them to leave the room like you're about to handle your business in the bathroom or something like that. Because he's trying to psych himself up to talk to Magus about a big, serious spell that he's about to cast that's going to blow up everything. So Chris clears his throat, looks straight ahead, and says, all the same. Okay. Press the button. He's like, yeah, that was great, Chris. Why don't we try again? This time I want you to sound a little more annoyed. Okay. All the same. Wow. All right, that was exactly the same. All right, let's try something different. I want you to sound really nervous, like you've just been caught with your pants down at high school when you're doing your presentation. Oh, okay, yeah, I've had that dream before. All right. All the same. This goes on for an hour.
Oh, man.
And at one point, I get so fed up. I'm like, could you come back in here? And I call him out of the recording booth, and I bring him up to the front, and I go, it all sounds the same. He goes, what are you talking about? I've been doing a different take every time. So to make the point across, I grab each individual track, and I stack it on top of each other in the project and play it. And it sounds like the Borg collective from Star Trek. And he goes, wow, that sounds all the same. I go, yeah, maybe it does. But like as time got on, he got more practice and he got better and better into it. And now he narrates audiobooks and he's phenomenal.
Wow.
He's really come a long way, and I've been happy to be a part of that process with him.
So it is no longer the same.
Thankfully, but we every time he starts falling into that habit again, I'll be like, Chris, yes, Kennedy, all the same. I go, I hate you.
That's too funny. Well, that's when you think about it, it's kind of amazing. I mean, as directing this, you can hear the voices and everything. Have you ever failed on a Magus? Have you ever failed to get the sound you wanted out of somebody, or can you?
Yeah, I always had a very specific idea in my head about how a lot of these characters would sound, and I had to at some points I had to really talk through with the actor to get it down right. Like, one of the problems that Magus Elgar has as a character is that he sounds like a dick if you don't present his voice properly. The way he writes, the way he's written, the way he sounds, he can sound very callous and very just not pleasant to be around if you don't have the right performer. With William, we had to workshop a little bit of a lot of the cadence of certain lines because we didn't want Elgar to sound like he was whining too much or that he was condescending or anything like that. Where when he did sound condescending, it would be very tongue in cheek. Like probably one of the lines in episode 2 that he has. So he says, either you're blocking my magic or I have no idea what's happening, and I assure you that the latter never happens. and like that line you'd sound terrible when you just sound like a dick if you say that line wrong. But because we worked really hard, William and I, to get the voice down right, I can confidently say that 80% of the time he's a bit endearing about it. And of course we kick Elgar's butt on occasion to make him a little more down to earth as time goes on, because the mentor who never learns anything, the mentor who never learns all this stuff about their journey is very cliche.
But funny.
It can be funny, like, in a Doctor Who, Rick and Morty kind of way.
Yeah, I love Rick and Morty.
I have a love-hate relationship with that show.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, it's one of those kind of shows that feels like that the people who watch it aren't in on the joke.
Yeah.
The case in point is that it seems like there's this big cliche or this meme that's been going around of
You have to be a certain intelligence to enjoy Rick and Morty.
Oh, yeah. No,
but like
morons.
the guys who made Rick and Morty are like, guys, we're making poop jokes. Like we have some kind of existential thing going on, but if anybody like overthinks what this show is about, you're clearly not enjoying it properly. You're just missing the point. Because like they're trying to like all this fan base is glorifying Rick Sanchez as this messianic, brilliant scientist who can do anything and everything and is a dick about it while he's doing it. But the show is abundantly aware that he's a terrible person that you should not like, and that that everything he does is a sickness. And no one seems to be paying attention to that. I think the best episode about like that expresses that. There's an episode in season 3 where they're going to this thing called the Citadel of Ricks, and they're showing like life in the Citadel of Ricks, and it makes no sense. It makes zero sense because the whole idea about Rick is that he's supposed to be like this very willful, brilliant scientist, but there's about 400 versions of him that work in a factory for other Ricks. Which just kind of breaks the character when you think about it.
Yeah.
And the show even acknowledges this. Like at the very end of the episode, the C-137 or the real Rick and Morty come out from whatever adventure they were having in Atlantis, and they go, I wonder what was going on with the Citadel with Ricks. He goes, anybody that's thinking about that place is an idiot and should not be taking the show should not be taking that so seriously. Like they acknowledge it. They acknowledge that this is stupid. But I mean, they have fun. They have fun with it. They have some silly, stupid ideas that go about it, and I do feel like that they take a lot of really cool ideas and just kind of like, here's the idea, let's toss it aside and do something else now. Which is a little unfortunate, but I mean, like, you know, it'd be like watching the Twilight Zone at 4 times the speed in terms of like concepts they introduced.
Yeah.
But like honestly, my favorite sci-fi short film that I had ever watched does exactly that kind of thing, but is much more thoughtful about it. It's called Don Hertzfeldt's The World of Tomorrow. Don Hertzfeldt is an animator who mostly draws in stick figures. You might know him from such cartoons like Rejected Cartoons, the animation show, and a couple of others. All of his stuff is typically like hand drawn on paper.
Right.
And you'll probably remember from some of these lines where like my favorite with his Rejected Cartoons was it was a bunch of cartoons that he used for commercials, and they were all complete bonkers nonsense. Because you'd have like a character sitting there holding a giant spoon and him just going, my spoon's too big. Yeah.
Oh, you know banana.
Yeah, exactly.
The Learning Channel.
Yeah.
Totally.
All the something is bleeding stuff.
Yeah, all that
I'm
stuff.
not a fan of that.
Oh yeah,
But
I just got turned on to that about 4 weeks ago.
yeah, but World of Tomorrow is he takes the whole idea of it is about a woman who goes back in time to talk to a past version of herself. And by past version of herself, I mean that the older woman, is a 4th generation clone of the little girl. And the little girl is 3.5 years old and sounds exactly like a 3.5-year-old girl. And what he did was he walked around this house recording this 3.5-year-old girl and took all of her nonsense babbling, showing her pictures and all that stuff, and made a movie around it. And he introduced these absolutely stunning, brilliant ideas for all these sci-fi concepts in like things I'd never imagined somebody would come up with for like a sci-fi production, and would just like show them as like this progression of this really strange comedic nonsense world. And it's in classic Don Hertzfeldt fashion where like it's all stick figures, but it's all digital now. Probably my favorite one is like he introduces this concept where there's a museum where there is a clone of a man that is put in a tube. All he does is stand there because he doesn't have a frontal lobe, so he's just kind of a vegetable just standing there. And the whole museum exhibit of him is watching a man age in real time. And the woman's talking about this man is like she goes and visits this museum of this brain dead guy, and she goes, "For a brief moment, I fell in love." And she grew like attached to this man, saying, "What? I wonder what he thought about," knowing full well that he was thinking about nothing. Did he think about me in his non-thoughts? Like, I strongly recommend giving it a shot. Like, I mean, like, rejecting cartoons is definitely an acquired taste, but World of Tomorrow is, again, one of my favorite short sci-fi films. You can probably find it on Vimeo somewhere. It's probably like $2 or something like that. It's worth the rent. I absolutely adore it.
Wow.
Did you ever see how the creative concept? Who's the guy that makes regular show?
Oh, J.G. Quintel.
J.J. Quintel. It was just a handwritten scratch with the two voices of Benson and Mordecai, and they were just two guys in a convenience store. And
No, I had
they
never
were
seen
stick
that.
figures. It was the first concept, and then they ended up taking acid or something, and then that's where he turns into the gumball machine. And
It's just occurring to me that like regular show is in so many ways owed to it owes its existence a lot to Clerks. You just made me realize that.
yeah.
Wow, that is a weird thing to connect together.
Yeah, you'll have to watch.
Because they've got a very similar dynamic, don't they?
Yeah,
For Rigby and Mordecai.
yeah.
Which, man, that is a show that I never would have considered like Cartoon Network picking up. 'Cause
Oh,
that is like having a cartoon show about a bunch of 20-somethings just doesn't sound like it'd be done very often.
Yeah, like how more. I'm 26. They always said that I'm 26 years old. They're like, okay, they live in a park. They're slackers that
Oh, but it's a great show though. 'Cause
Yeah.
they got some really like stellar performers. It's wicked funny.
And
it's
people don't get it. Like Pops, he's from Lollyland. He's not even human. He's a lollipop. They don't get.
or like Skips, who was voiced by Mark Hamill, who
Yeah,
God.
the Yeti that's all he does is skip.
And well, like when you finally like hear the story behind why he skips, it's kind of like, wow, that's actually kind of deep.
Yeah. It goes with, I've seen that before. Remember he always said that
Every time.
Skips, what do we do? I've seen this before.
Of course, you had that one episode. So it's like, Skips, we've really got ourselves in a jam. What do we do?
Let me tell you this. It's not my problem.
Leaves.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Oh man, we're about 5 more minutes.
5 minutes left. Hey, where can we follow you, Kennedy?
You can follow me on Twitter at Magus Elgar, Maguselgar. Our show is on iTunes, Bandcamp, Audible, wherever audiobooks are sold. You can get it for pretty cheap for like $8. I know Audible's got it at like $20 or something like that. But if you have like an Audible account, you can listen to it with like your once a month thing, which,
I'm not going to toot my own horn, but it might be very worth considering to listen to as part of your subscription. You have nothing to lose.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, we're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We've got a newsletter on the website at maguselgar.com. Maguselgar.com. You can look at the primer, which has a bunch of different little factoids about the show and about the lore and the universe. Hearth being the alternate dimension that it is. We've also got like artwork. We've got trailers. We've got little tidbits here and there. We're working on building a free podcast that talks about like little fun things in the world. Like we talk about the lore and other things like that. We're workshopping that right now because I need to make sure that I don't write something that is non-canon.
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
Because we had like the whole bit where we're talking about the world of Hearth. And it's like, oh yeah, it's a binary system where it's got like 2 suns and the planet is banana shaped. We call it the planetane.
Yeah.
But you can listen to the show on iTunes, Bandcamp, Amazon, all those. But you can if you're not convinced that the show is going to be up your alley, if you like Harry Potter but you're not sure that you'd like this, I strongly recommend you find us on YouTube. We've got the first 3 episodes for free. That is about an hour and 20 minutes of content that you can listen to.
Oh, cool. That's good.
Each of the episodes are about 20 to 30 minutes. We've got 11 episodes. So it's great for a commute, like when you're driving to work or anything like that. It's just the length to get a good drive in. And the cast is very talented, and it's as close to my heart as a tongue-in-cheek show about a bunch of people chasing after magical who's-its and what's-its while discovering the magical wonders of property damage as you can be.
Yeah, cool.
And what's your next project? Anything you want to talk about yet?
Right now, my next project is right now I'm doing my freelance work. I'm working on editing a film called Everything You Are, which is a feature. Which I've got a lot of work ahead of me on that. But right now, the passion project that I have is I'm working on making season 2 of Magus Elgar, and I'm working on trying to get it making an animated series of shorts for this. I've got enough ideas for Magus Elgar to last another 2-3 seasons, and I kind of want to go somewhere with it, because a lot of what Magus Elgar is a lot about exploring, I guess, like the creativity that kind of resides in everybody, and you going through all of the obstacles that come your way within that. Like the whole big thing about magic is that they insult the elements, which are like these abstract concepts like fire or food comas. And they insult them to get like provoke an emotional response of sorts to get them to get smited, and they channel that into magic. And a lot of that's not unlike how we get inspired for our own stuff, like for our projects or writing or movies or whatever ideas that we come up with, stand-up comedy, etc. And so much of that creativity is us provoking a response from somebody.
Yeah, the elements or the powers that be or anything.
That can be a positive and a negative thing. Because like there's some people that like they don't get the joke or they get offended. And then there's other people where they're like they get inspired, they get ideas. And there's a lot of pitfalls in trying to, well, make a living off of a stupid idea you've got.
Wow.
Well, we want to thank you for coming in, man. It was
Yeah,
it was great nerding out and
the stories on the boat and animation and everything else were amazing.
I'd like to get involved with your project. It sounds pretty good, man.
Well, just hit me up at some point. Maybe you could provide a voice at some point.
No. He wants to do the trash. He wants to clean the counter. What a voice! What are you talking about?
Hey, we've got this other out in September. We do a thing out here at the IE called the 909 Film Festival. Oh. And that would be a fun project. It has to be under 9 minutes and 9 seconds long. It costs $9.09 to enter. And it has to be filmed within the 909 area code. And it's pretty fun. So I'm getting some ideas, and I'm just, after with your character and voice, I think we could come up with some good silly thing. I was thinking about doing a little time travel thing, or
that could be fun. I'm doing a little bit. I'm mostly like a post guy. Like I do editing, sound design, voice acting, and the like. But I know a lot of people who are phenomenal cinematographers who have good crew and the like. I could probably tap a few shoulders.
I got a few cameras, but you're a mix down guy. I like that, and I got
most I do on set is like sound mixing and boom up.
Okay.
Mostly because I am a tall person that can hold a stick.
Yeah. How tall are you?
I'm about 6'5".
6'5".
6'5".
6'9", 6'1", 6'2" with heels. Tomorrow is Hot Chick Friday.
Hot Chick Friday.
We have the lovely Jackie Hatton and her lovely friend coming in. We'll see the promo on Facebook later on today.
Booyah.
And we'll see you tomorrow on the Jeff and Janky Show.
Kennedy Phillips, thank you once again on the Jeff and Janky Show.
Be sure to listen to the Jeff and Janky Show, also known as Tall People Talking About Things.
Tall people talking about things. I like that.
Gang, thank you for joining us. See you tomorrow for a Hot Chick Friday.
Bye-bye.
Don't swear until we're off the air, boys. Kennedy, thank you very much. You were
Yeah,
a great guest.
I hope you guys. I hope I didn't like ramble too much.
No, your family stories with the sailboat were much more compelling than I thought they would be.
Yeah, I figured that they'd be a little more interested in talking about D&D stuff, which I would have loved to talk about because I actually a lot of the ideas that I have for my shows, I do role playing games to workshop them.
Did you RPG when you were on the ocean?
No, I didn't learn about RPGs until high school.
Wow.
Which, oh man, would that have been so fantastic to do.
Join us home, Gary Gygax.
Yeah. Benny would love that because Benny loved D&D.
Benny's a big D&D fan?
Yeah.
I run a lot of games myself. Like, I'm mostly a DM myself.
My friend Andrew Chavez, he does he loves doing board games, man. Everything.
They have really come a long way. My cousin actually just finished publishing
He
one.
paints the figures, and he's a big artist. He was working at what was that place that does the Iron Man, all the costumes?
Oh, yeah, our Hammerhead Effects.
No.
Guys, not to keep everything moving, but I got an audition at 10:40.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? No, thank you.
This is great stuff. Where's your business card? I need one.
Oh, I'll give you one. Give me a
You want a water for the road, brother?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, our business cards should be done. I had a guy Photoshop and do our phone numbers on our cards, and we do our cards again.
Perfect.
So I try to get those before you go to Monster Palooza.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So you guys save this on YouTube, right?